You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Tonight's story comes straight from the woods of Ohio, where a group of seasoned Bigfoot hunters thought they knew what to expect until they stumbled upon something that shook them to their core. Mike Miller, part of the Ohio Night Stalkers, takes us on a wild ride through encounters with a creature that rocks the very foundation of what we thought we knew about Bigfoot. Rock-throwing, eerie howls, and an unexpected moonlit glimpse of a creature so large it defies belief. This is no legend, no myth. It's a first-hand account straight from the heart of Ohio's darkest forest. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Mike Miller today. Mike is an individual from the Ohio Night Stalkers group from down there in Ohio. We've talked to one of Mike's proteges, Cody, on the show recently. And afterwards, I was able to get connected to Mike. Mike has recorded over 10 years of interesting audio evidence from southeast Ohio, some of which we will be listening tonight. And those have been also listened to by David Ellis from the Olympic Project. You may have also heard some of Mike's encounters that were featured in the Terror in the Woods TV show. But Mike, welcome to the show. How's it going tonight, man?
Thanks for having me. It's going good. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. Just kind of hanging out and talking about Bigfoot. It makes for a good night. It's crazy how much wild stuff happens in Ohio. And when I was talking to Cody, he was really sharing some interesting things. But before we get into that, someone who has been involved for so long as yourself, I always like to start off the interview by asking, what was it that got you into the Bigfoot field to begin with?
Well, I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to go do this. I basically watched growing up in any show on Bigfoot or UFOs or anything, unexplained stuff. I watched all that stuff, in search of and all those old programs. And I was interested in them. And I never really thought anything was in Ohio. I didn't think Ohio had big enough tracts of woods, wooded areas for anything like that. And I thought all that would be Pacific Northwest and, stuff like that, California, stuff like that. But I don't know, 17, 18 years ago, on the local Channel 7 news, I was living in Huber Heights at the time, and they talked about a Bigfoot sighting in Ohio. And I laughed, I'm like, oh, come on. And I thought, people were freaking drunk or stoned or, scared of their own shadow kind of thing. And, but it kind of, made me chuckle. And I decided to get on. I was working like a second, third shift hybrid thing at the time. So I was going to be up a while. But anyway, I got online and I typed in Ohio and Bigfoot. And lo and behold, I think I stumbled into the BFRO website and I clicked on the state. And then I was expecting to see one or two reports is all I thought. And basically it dropped down to reports by county. And I about fell out of my freaking chair. And I just started, the counties the county I lived in, I read those. Counties I used to live in, I read those. And I just started looking, neighboring counties and reading reports. And, some of them I laughed. Some of them I thought, you're just scared of your own shadow, basically. But there was a couple of those that kind of struck a nerve. And one of them, the guy was in southern Ohio, and he had a 5-year-old male German Shepherd. And I grew up with a German Shepherd. I'm partial to him and my favorite dog. And he said he didn't know what was in his backyard, but his inside door was open, his outside door was closed, and it was all glass. Well, this dog came through that glass door to get back in the house, ran to the furthest point away in the house, curled up and peed itself. And those dogs don't do that. And then there's a report where a lady had her kids walking along the river. This is in Miami County up by Tip City. And I'm reading that report, and there was whistling going on. And the mom at first thought somebody was fishing and just playing around. But what worried the mom is she taught music, and she said the whistles went so high up in octave and stuff. She said a person can't do that. And her boy was kind of dragging behind there, and he supposedly seen this thing and had to have therapy. And she called the police. And I'm thinking, no way that this is only, 10 miles or so from the freaking airport. I mean, come on. And I back then I was younger and stuff, played a lot of softball, and guy on the team, his brother was a Troy cop. And I said, hey, ask your brother. I said, I'm not trying to run this lady down or nothing. I said, I just want to know if this really happened, or is this like with internet stories, especially, nowadays, oh my goodness. But I don't know, a month or two went by and he goes, oh, by the way, I talked to my brother and yeah, they went there. The cops went there. That lady really did call. There's a report on that. So I decided to go to that area. I was married at the time, and it took her cousin, Paul, and we walked back in there. And this is the strangest thing. It was August, had rained in weeks, but just kind of a weird feeling. And I seen like structures. What I know now is a structure, but I just seen weird things that didn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, how could the tree be broken like that, and that could be like that? How did that? And it's too big for someone to lay it in there. And I thought, well, a storm wouldn't do that, But I just seen some weird stuff, and had the feeling of kind of being watched, and I don't know, it just kind of struck me too, and I just kept. Basically, I know this is whining on and on. I'm sorry about that, but you want me to keep going?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I just kept looking, and the more I looked, the more I found, and I didn't expect that. And the internet sent me. I found a guy named George Taylor through Dan Mosier. Dan Mosier had a website, and he had pictures posted from Clark County, like Buck Creek State Park. But I were blurry, but it was something. I'm like, no way, and I contacted him. Then he hooked me up with George, and George took me through I'm going to go ahead and say the name of the park, Charleston Falls in Miami County. And we went off the trails. And if you go off the trails there, you find some really interesting stuff, structures, a tree that had all the limbs ripped off of it. It's bent and driven into the ground. Looks like a little mini St. Louis arch. I seen trees that were probably 2 and 3 inches in diameter, snapped at about a 7-foot height, laid the same way. And when you looked above those, and this was a fresh break. I mean, the wood was not, it hadn't been exposed, that long. I mean, the wood was bright color and everything. And all the canopy above it was perfect, untouched. And I'm like, a storm isn't going to come in here and break these trees and then not rip that canopy out, And he just showed me, and George taught me the difference between storm damage and unnatural damage. There's a tree there that's leaning into these other ones, and the tree was snapped almost at ground level, probably 60 yards up a trail, and dragged, and you'd have to have, this is a big freaking part of a tree. You would need a, forklift. You would need some type of equipment to do that. And I just kept seeing all this stuff and filling my head with it. But I was still on the fence. And we had an encounter over there during the daytime where we went up a dry creek bed, did some whistles, and something followed us. The rest of the way we hiked through the park. And of course, I work for UPS, and people at work are having a field day ribbing me, and they're like, oh, that's, he probably had one of his buddies over there and he did that to scare you. And I said, okay, that is definitely possible. I said, but why? I don't work for the newspaper, don't work for a TV station. Why go to all that trouble to trick a truck driver, And, but I decided to do a comparison test. So I waited probably a month, and I decided to call in sick that day and go over there by myself. I didn't tell anybody. The only person who knew I was going there that day was God. That was it. And I went there and I hiked that same creek bed off the trail. I whistled, went back to the trail, walked the park, and lo and behold, I was followed again. And that was kind of pretty unnerving, actually. And I told them people at work, I said, now, either something is in there or this guy's buddy lives in the park in case someone comes by, that he needs to, sneak around and sneak up on. But anyway, long story short, ran into some of the people I'm with now. Mike Feltner, met him through Mark Mills. Mike retired this year. He's just, him and his wife, Pam, have a lot going on. They're trying to get their house ready. They may sell it and move. They're not sure. They want to travel, kind of got to do the husband thing, and I met him, and they were different. They went out at nighttime. George was a day stalker. Everybody else I had ran into or talked to was all during the day. But these guys were the exact opposite. So I'm like, okay. So they invited me on a night hike, and we went to East Fork State Park, hiked one of the horse trails, and this was in October. It was rainy, probably 40 degrees, not a really good night. I'm like the third wheel here. I'm just along for the ride. And we went, I don't know, a mile or two up in there, and they did the wood knocks and the howls, and nothing replied. And, rain picked up a little bit, and they're like, well, nothing's going on. We stayed a couple hours. Let's just head out. And I'm thinking, okay, this is cool. I went on a night hike. Looks like I'm going to survive it. All's good. And about 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes into the walk out of there, is when things really changed for me, because at this point I'm on the fence. I've seen a bunch of blurry pictures. I've read some really compelling stories that were just, made you, goosebumps and all that. But still, I'm kind of like, I don't know. We start walking out of there, and we had first time I ever had a rock thrown at me. They threw a rock at us, and this rock was big. And I'm not saying this because I was in the woods at night with no light on. It was just my imagination, and I was scared. I was a teenager, and don't do this, kids, but I threw rocks at trains. You know how big a rock is, and what it sounds like, and all that. This rock, as it was in flight, because we couldn't see it, it was hitting the tree limbs. It wasn't bouncing off of them. It was snapping them. That is a totally different freaking noise. And it hit the tree over by me with a lot of force, bounced off, hit the ground, and tumbled end over end. I mean, I heard all that. And I'm like, I was really pretty much freaked out and alarmed at that point. And at the lectures, I like to say, anyone that's, I was the person in the back of the line. I was the third guy there, trying to walk out of there. And anyone that's seen a good horror movie, you know what happens to the guy in the back of the line. He's the first one gone, and that's what I thought was awaiting me. And we had like, I don't know, probably 15 minutes still to walk out of there. And as we made our way out, there's a spot where the woods came right up on that trail. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is an ambush point. And sure enough, we had another rock thrown. And same thing, it's sailing over our heads. It's snapping branches. And at that point, I did not think I was going to see my son grow up. And I literally, I'm not saying this just to say it, I really did it. I said the Lord's Prayer under my breath. The rest of the way I hiked out of there, I just kept repeating it. And when I got off that trail, I knelt down and kissed the ground because I didn't think I was getting out of there. And that unnerved me. And of course, they're like, oh, people threw rocks at you. I'm like, no one knew we were going there. We didn't put it, on Facebook at the time. Hey, we're going here. We're going to look for Bigfoot. No, and we went somewhere else first to a private property that said they had something going on, and then went to this place. It was like this, the out of the blue. Hey, let's go here since we got time, for something to do. And, that kind of night way back in there, and kids are going to just hide in case somebody comes by to throw rocks at them. I mean, that's crazier than Bigfoot, actually, to think that. But that struck me because I thought there's something going on. And I pretty much retired. I had all winter to think about it, and I unretired because I thought I want to know what's going on. But a 3-inch knife and a walking stick weren't going to cut it anymore, so I got my concealed carry permit. And that's only for my own kind of peace of mind. But we continued on. Mark kind of left the group, and it was like Mike and his son Jordan and I, and we went into it's probably about a year later. We went down into Adams County because there's just a lot of places down there. There's a lot of roads that aren't marked. There's just a lot of it doesn't look like Ohio. I mean, it looks like West Virginia or something. The Appalachians start there, and it's woolly. It's crazy. And we would go. You want me to keep going, or you need me to stop?
No, you are good to go.
Okay, all right. Just checking. Sorry. We went into Adams County. I had a map. I'm a UPS driver, so I got a map because none of these roads down there, a lot of them aren't marked, and I got to know where I'm going. So I get a map, and we start gridding. And I said, okay, this unmarked road is this. This one is this. So we start driving them, and I noticed one of these roads dead-ended into a graveyard, and I thought, wow, that looks kind of crazy, and had a lot of green around it, and I thought, hey, that means there's supposedly nothing there. So we drove back in there during the daytime. I always want to go back during the daytime and look at where we're going to be at night because I want to know what in the heck I'm getting into, because I've seen too many horror movies, and so we drove back in there during the day, and it was creepy in the daytime. And really heavily wooded, a lot of undergrowth. The sun doesn't make it, down to the ground all the way. In a lot of the areas, it's just kind of, it's different. And so we're like, okay, we're going back here. And this was like a year later or so in October. It was actually October 11th, 2014. And Jordan, Mike Feltner, and I, rolled it. We had to go into West Union for a while because it was raining torrentially. Ohio and rain both have 4 letters. It's not a coincidence. But we waited the rain out, and then we went back to where we went down that road. It went to the graveyard. Now that TV show, Terror in the Woods, they showed us going there during the daytime, like when it started. We did a recon thing. They just they put some stuff in there that didn't happen. But we go in there, and it's probably after 10 o'clock at night, easy. And at the first location we stopped, we got a reply. And to me, it sounds a lot like kind of a gibbon monkey kind of a sound, like a young one. And that's all that happened there. And we drove this road. It's probably 5 miles long. It's windy, hilly. Got to have a 4-wheel drive to get back in there. And because you would destroy a car going in there, back in there. But we went to the graveyard where it dead ended. And I never thought I would feel safer in a graveyard than anywhere else I was that night. But that really happened because everywhere else we were, the way the woods were right up against the trails and stuff, I felt like something could reach out and grab one of us at any time and pull us in, and we would just be gone. Someone would turn around and say, where did he go? Kind of thing. And but at the graveyard, it was, I kind of felt safe. And nothing happened for a long time. And then we heard whistles and stuff moving around. And then pretty much all hell broke loose there. They started screaming, howling, whatever you want to call it. And the coyotes were going off with them. But you can definitely tell the difference between the coyotes and the squatch. I mean, because the coyotes are yippy, dog-like noises. And, the other noise was very deep, powerful. It was totally different. But they did mimic. They actually started whooping, like doing, wah, wah, like they were, mimicking the coyotes. But I'm not sure if I sent you that recording or not. But that one's good, but it's kind of bad because we're both talking too much in it just because we were we never had anything like that happen. And, you know, the adrenaline's through the roof, and we just kind of like, wow, you hear that? Wow, you know, and kind of thing. And of course, they embellished that in that TV show. They had us shining flashlights everywhere, which we did not do. We're there in the pitch black. It's probably like 1:30 in the morning when we're in that graveyard. Total darkness. And never thought I'd do that. If you told me that years ago, I'd pull something like that, I'd have said, you're crazy. And it was so weird. That went on, it was very intense, and then it just stopped. Like somebody threw a freaking switch, just stopped. And we waited probably 45 minutes because we wanted to hear that again. Nothing happened. So we start heading out. And, you know, one way in, one way out kind of thing. So we stop at this place we call the bridge, because it's a little bridge, little guardrails on it. And I know I sent you this one. It's the one labeled baboon, but this thing went off. I mean, way more powerful than the other ones because it was closer. But that did not dawn on us. We were just kind of oblivious that these things were following us and getting closer. We just kind of didn't think about that. And coyotes went off with that too. But, you know, like you mentioned in the introduction, David Ellis, who's a professional sound analyst, Washington State, he's analyzed this audio. And the one from the bridge, the reason it's called baboon is because his computer program not only identifies sounds and can tell if it's a sound is being manufactured by a person, you know, to mimic something else, but it also, there's a spectrograph hooked into that, and he can see where it goes in hertz, the hertz band. He said that scream at the bridge pegged higher than a baboon on a spectrograph, and that is evidence.
Wow, let's check that out right now.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and play this this sounds from the bridge area.
Yep.
Wow, that's one of the freakiest things I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's he looped it. You know, it repeats itself 3 times. Okay. He does that so better chance to hear it. It didn't do it 3 times. It's the one recording looped 3 times, and you can hear at the end where it's going whoa, 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 whoa. So it's actually mimicking the coyotes again at the end of that. But that pegged higher than a baboon on a spectrograph at that location, and then it stopped, just like every place we had been, just dead stop, nothing else. So we go on down the road or out of there, and there's a place we stopped at. We call it the turnaround. It's the only place that's wide enough you can turn around if you want it. I know that's clever, isn't it? But you're given, when you're not familiar and you're back in the middle of nowhere, you're going to give stuff names, you know. And but we got out of the vehicle there, and you know, Mike had did some howls earlier. This thing had howled, and it like mimicked the howl he did earlier, but this sounded a lot bigger. And he kind of went over by the edge of the woods off the trail, and this thing was behind a tree, and it actually peeked around the tree at him. He's seen the cone-shaped head and one of the eyes. And, he kind of stumbled back toward the car. They showed him in the TV show having a full-blown anxiety attack. It wasn't that bad, but everybody was, kind of, I won't say freaked out, but we were like, it was, something was going on, and we were reacting to it. And, nothing else happened there. We move on. We stop again. We're within probably half a mile of being out of there at this point, off that road, if you want to call it a road. And we all get out this time, and Jordan does a howl, and he gets a reply. We don't have that recorded because our batteries died. We learned a lesson that night. So now, like, we go out. I have a tackle box. It's just nothing but batteries, basically. And so we didn't record anything else that night. But Jordan wasn't even done howling, and they replied, but they were on each side of this road, trail, whatever you want to call it. And that really alarmed me, because I'm like, wait a minute, we're freaking surrounded. That's when it dawned on all of us that, hey, we're surrounded and they're close. They're way closer than they were. And it's like, are they going to let us leave kind of feel? Are we being herded in, closed off? And, we know we're not that far from getting out of there, but it's like we're still inside the bottle, if you want to call it that. And, wondering if they're going to put the lid on close us in. And all this is going on, and I hear air leaking out of something. And I thought Mike had driven over something. I went over by the vehicle. There was nothing. Wasn't coming from there. It was coming from inside the wood line. And I thought, what in the world could be in the wood line doing that noise? And I actually walked into the woods. I walked to the edge of the wood line, then I walked into the woods. And this is where I could have probably lost my life, actually, without knowing, totally freaking oblivious. No light on, and I walk into the dark woods trying to figure out what this damn noise is. And, that saying, curiosity kills a cat, that's a reason that's there. But I stopped. And thank God I stopped, because if I take another step or two, I don't know what would happen, because there's something in the woods there with me. It's not even probably 20 yards in front of me. I just can't see it because it's dark. But I stand there and I close my eyes, and I thought, okay, I'm going to concentrate on this noise and figure this out. I mean, does someone throw a damn scuba tank in the woods? I mean, I'm going to find out what's going on. That's what I'm thinking at the time. That's not that. What's happening is there's something there breathing in and out. And at this point, I walked in there, when it finished its breath, it had that huff kind of sound. And I got, you can't see him, I got freaking goosebumps saying this right now. And this thing is doing this, and this huff, breathing that air out. And I am frozen. I am terrorized, but frozen. I can't even move. And I'm like, what I got myself into? And I don't panic, but I decide to slowly start backing up. I'm afraid to turn my back. I don't want to run, but I'm just taking little bitty steps backwards and trying not to fall down. And I took, because I don't know if this thing's going to come out or not, but before I did that, I kind of forgot about something here. After one of those last huffs, this thing actually emitted a very low, very guttural, I don't even know what you want to call it, roar, some kind of thing. And it reverberated off my chest. I actually felt it. It was like being at a heavy metal concert. And that's when I decided, I thought, this is it. This is Big Daddy, and he's wanting us out of here. This is a final to me, it was a final warning, get out of here or else. So I'm backing up. After I took maybe, I don't know how many steps, a few steps back, I did pull my gun. Now, I did not point it. I just left it against my leg, kind of, because I don't know if this thing's going to come out at me or not. The TV show has me firing a warning shot. I did not do that. When I felt my feet hit the gravel, I turn sideways a little bit and I yell out. And I probably, my voice is probably higher than Michael Jackson's at that point. And I yelled out, "We're getting the F out of here now." And those guys heard that too. I mean, they didn't feel it reverberate off their chest. We go running to Mike's vehicle. We get in, and Mike, I mean, he literally almost killed us. He almost drove off the cliff. Not a cliff, but we were elevated, you know, and he almost, you know, put us in the trees a different way. But, and we got out of there. And we went down probably almost to where you come out of there, and we stopped one more time just to make sure everybody's in the car, make sure everything's good, and just to kind of calm down, because we are breathing heavy, adrenaline's through the roof. We are just, you know, and we're trying to just calm down, take deep breaths, and we're sitting there, cars running, bright lights are on, and a deer walks in front of us and stops. Doesn't even look at us in the car. Could care less about the car. I look at Mike and say, "Hey, does this freaking thing want to ride or what?" And it snorts. It paws the ground. It knew those things. It was watching the direction we came from. And they were probably coming again. And it sensed them. And it turned and it ran the other way. And we got out of there. And that was, you know, October 11th, 2014. And I will never forget that. I will never forget the feel of that hitting my body, the energy of that. I won't forget how that sounded when it's exhaling its breath, and that little at the end and all that. I can never unhear that. And I don't, those are two things I don't ever want to hear again.
That is absolutely intense. My goodness. I mean, that's the kind of encounter that would either send you away from the field forever or you'd be in it forever. Wow. Whew.
Yeah, I lost some sleep over that one. The following weekend, I had my son, and at that time lived on the east side of Cincinnati, had a full finished basement, and I had a woods behind my building, and but not that big of a woods. And Noah liked to sleep down there. He called it camping out in the basement. And so we're down there. It's the weekend, and an owl went off about 3 a.m. And when it woke me up, and at first I thought they found us, you know. And yeah, I was unnerved by that for a while. And that story got out, and that's why we were on Tear in the Woods.
Now, something you had mentioned earlier is, so there in the group, there's been at least one visual sighting that's happened so far?
Yes. We've had, I know other people have had stuff at other times. I know Cody has seen shadows and stuff move around. Mike's had the one look around the tree. There's been glimpses. I've seen until last October. It's always October. October is some kind of a special month, you know, for stuff going on, it seems. I've had glimpses of stuff. I've turned around and thought I'd seen something, and there was a bush I walked by, but I didn't touch it, and it's moving, which meant something cut behind me, you know, one time, and big enough to put that bush in motion, and I didn't touch it because I came from kind of the other side of it. And I wouldn't count those, but last October at one of our news spots, just were able, given permission to get in there because it's privately owned. This is an area that these different valleys kind of dump into this area. It's I don't know, you go back in there and it's like, wow, it's like you feel like you went back in time. You feel like you've left the zip code, you know, you're just like, you're somewhere else. And it's just, it's a crazy feeling. And you want to go ahead and tell you what happened?
Absolutely.
Okay, last October, we were out there, and Mike was unable to do a lot last year, but he did go that weekend, and it was our 10-year anniversary. So we spoke at the Portsmouth Library on the 12th of October. But on Friday night, on the 11th, we went out for the 10-year anniversary. We went to all those spots, and on the 10-year anniversary, it was kind of special. So on the night of the 12th, we're at this new spot, and the moon is out, which I normally don't like because I just kind of feel like everything's, you're just like got a spotlight on you kind of thing. But we found a spot where I parked in an area where we were shadowed, and we had special guests that night. We had Mike was there, and Sabrina was there, Cody was there, Jeff Byers, who's the owner of Creature Replica. If the people that watch Expedition Bigfoot, Russ has that Bigfoot action figure on the back of his pack. Jeff makes those, and he was there, and Donna was there. She's like our contact in Adams County. She's Native American, and we're all there. And the McCoys, Bev and Mac McCoy are there, and we kind of split up, and Cody, Jeff, and Mike go up the trail, walking away from where we're at, because a lot of times, they don't like that. They don't like you splitting up because they just don't know what the hell you're doing. And the rest of us are in this other spot, and we sit like kind of in a circle, but we're each watching a different area. We're watching 360, but everybody's got their spot. So I'm watching across where this wood line is, and there's this huge tree out in front of it, and a little bit of a field. And I see something come out of this wood line, and at first, I'm like, okay, and then it keeps coming, and I thought at first seemed like it was kind of hunched down, so I wasn't sure what it was. And there are bears in that area. There was one actually hid by a car way north of there. But anyway, that's another story. It stood up. And at that point, I thought, I'm looking at it. I'm like, that's not a damn bear. And it keeps coming. And it's watching them. It's looking up the road at the trail, whatever, at those guys. I don't think it sees us. And it keeps coming. And I'm seeing it. I don't see it super clear, but it's out to where I can see it, and it's standing up, and it's 7-8 foot tall. It's big, and it keeps coming. And at that moment, I actually start having an argument with myself in my mind. Half of my brain is saying that is not what you think it is. There's no way it would walk out that far and expose itself, because I think they're really good at being stealthy, and they don't like giving up the upper hand, and they usually don't make mistakes. Maybe this one made a mistake because it didn't see us, but it seen the other people, and it came out. My brain's saying that's not what you think it is. It wouldn't do that. Then the other half of my brain is saying, dummy, right there it is. And it keeps coming, and there's a spot, but there were these trees have a little bit of space between them, and the moonlight's coming through there, and it gets right to that spot, and that moonlight hits that thing, and it's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I've told the story a little bit, but not a lot. I've not told it at work because, I'm afraid the reaction is going to be, and to skeptics, they're going to say, yeah, right, you research Bigfoot and you've seen one. Yeah, sure, but, this happened. And this moonlight hits this thing, and it's shimmering. It's shimmering like silver. And I'm not saying it's glowing silver and it's from outer space. What I think the reason that's happening is thanks to a TV show I watched 3-4 years ago. They had a hair sample, and it's between ape and human. They have nothing to compare it to. It's black at the base, but at the tip of the hair toward the top, the very top of the hair, it's translucent, which means it's clear. And I think that's how they blend in so well. I think the hair's like that, and they can go stand next to something and blend in with it just like a chameleon. It's not supernatural. It's just natural. you know, and because of the moonlight hitting it, that's the tip of the hair absorbing the moonlight, and it's shimmering because the silver just kind of like it was washing over it. It was, I don't know how to explain it the right way other than that. And at that point, I stood up because I'm shell shocked. And when I stood up, it seen me move, and it turned and looked dead at me. And I could tell it was brown underneath the silver. And the face was dark. I couldn't make out any features. I wasn't close enough for that. But it seen me move when I stood up, and it knew I was, or we were there then. And we're just kind of looking at each other. And I don't know what it's going to do. You know, I put my hand down. I've got it on top of my gun. I haven't took it out of the holster or anything. It's just there. And we're just kind of looking at each other. And I'm still almost in disbelief of what's going on. And I raised my hands up to show, you know, like, I probably sound stupid doing this, but I just kind of showed my hands like, yeah, I got nothing in my hands. You know, I kind of raised my hands up. And then it just like doesn't give a damn, and it just turns and walks back into the wood line. But when it went into that wood line, to me is like a little message to us. It could have stepped over this part of this tree that fell down. It stepped on it, and it crushed it. I mean, it was like crunch, and then it went back in the woods, kind of like saying, you know, you don't want to follow me in here, kind of a thing. And yeah, so that's my, you know, I didn't see its facial features, didn't see eyes and stuff like that, but I seen it. I mean, it was out in the open far enough to where I could tell you that's what it was. It wasn't anything else, you know. And I'm still kind of at war with myself over it also too, just because it was unexpected. I never expected that to happen, and just I don't know.
That is incredibly intense, and you know, it looks like, I mean, you at least got a really good look at the hair, the silhouette, and is there anything that you noticed that you said to yourself, man, the community usually gets that wrong, and what I'm seeing right now is a little different than what people say?
No, nothing like that. Just the size of it. You know, because I've been to football games and been down at field level and seen, you know, NFL players and stuff like that, you know, in uniform, and this thing was way freaking bigger than them people. I mean, it was, you know, it was, you know, that for sure, you know, was striking, but you know, nothing I could say. Well, no, it's, you know, but just the, you know, the odd thing was just the shimmering, the silver light shimmering off of it, because they, you know, I think because of the translucent hair tips, you know, absorbing that, and that was the weirdest thing to me, because, you know, I'm not saying it was colored silver, you know, it just, its hair absorbed that light for a little bit until it moved, and then that went away. Of course, once it steps out of the moonlight, it's back to being, you know, it was black before then because it was in darkness. But I could see that it was brown. It was a dark brown actually color, you know, underneath the silver because of the moonlight.
Having that visual encounter, did that affect you in any ways in the days after that sighting?
Yeah, it still affects me now, just because it's like, you know, like I said, my brain is like, no, that couldn't have happened. It wouldn't have done that. They're too smart to do something like that. But then it's like, hey, you know, you've seen it, dummy. You know, what was that then? You know, they did that. It's just, I guess because I didn't expect that. I never, all these years I've researched, you know, I've been thrilled, you know, people like, you know, Dr. Jeff Meldrum is like, you know, with Bob being pretty much retired, to me, Meldrum is like the Pope of the Bigfoot world. He's right. Numero uno, and he does the tracks, and that's great, and his stories and stuff, and examining those tracks is second to none. And And tracks are fun. I found a few by accident, but I don't want to carry stuff out and try to make casts of tracks. I'm excited about audio because audio is something I can bring home, and I know it happened that night I was there. You know, a track could be a day old, a week old, could be a month old or longer. The audio happened that freaking night while we were there. And then I can send that to people like David Ellis, and he can put it through his program and tell me if it's, you know, really something strange or if it's an owl or whatever else, or, you know, horse, whatever, you know.
Have you been back to that location since that time?
No, we're going back Memorial Day.
Oh, wow.
And you actually have a recording from that. The audio is what excites me, and that's what I'm trying to record. You know, that's why the recorders are set up to try to gather evidence that's happening that night. Yes, we are going to that area this coming Memorial Day, and you have a recording I think I sent you from last year Memorial Day. It's not at that exact spot. It's probably maybe, I don't know, not even 100 yards north of there, you know, same area. And it's labeled, I think, Hidden Valley Angry Giant. What we started doing in the last couple of years, we got away from the wood knock. You know, we wood knock sometime, but we got away from doing howls, you know, a human doing a howl or whatever. And Cody's got a call blaster, and it's got real animal sounds embedded in it already, loaded in there. And it's not a facsimile sound, it's a real animal. And that kind of breaks up the monotony. We sit in the dark and talk normal voice for about probably 30, 40 minutes. If nothing happens, we break that thing out. And that night last year, we call blasted a wolf howling. I'm not sure if there's wolves still in Ohio or not. I don't know. But it's a great thing to play because it stirs the coyotes up and it freaks things out. And it's the end of the wolf howl's got a real good woo kind of thing as it drops down, you know, kind of like a Bigfoot in a way. But it's just, and it just echoes. It's awesome. Nothing happened. Then Cody played wolves howling, a pair of wolves. And after he played that, we got a reply. I'm not sure what that is in the beginning. Part of it is a coyote. There might be something else in there, but I don't know, 20 seconds into that, there's a roar, and that's Big Daddy. What I think is happening there. I think that's the Big Daddy of that area, the group. There's more than one. And he's saying, hey, Mr. Wolf, you know, whatever, this is my freaking yard. If you want to play that.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and play the angry giant sound here. Nope, that's wrong. Here we go. Let's play the angry giant song. Wow, that was extremely. I'd probably be getting it. I don't know how I'd react to that. That's some wild stuff, dude.
I'm the one that whistled, like when it in between it there. Yep. At least we didn't talk. I was like whoa. But it was mad. That thing was mad.
Was that a one-time deal that you heard something like that, or is that something that you hear more than once?
No, there was more that night recorded. That was kind of the intense, kind of what I would call a defining moment, though. There's I'm not. I can't remember everything I sent you, but
we've got two more. Let's make sure we get them in. So the one we haven't done yet. There's one called Hidden Creatures.
Okay, that's from that night.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and play that one here. All right. So, what's the story behind the Hidden Creatures there?
That was a little bit later that night, and there's more than one they're communicating. And did you notice the one where it's like ooh,
Mm-hmm.
it changes pitch? You know, coyotes don't do that.
Yeah, that was weird. That was extremely weird. I can't imagine hearing both of those sounds on the same night. We also have one that says "ooh ah ooh." So
That's from I'm trying to think when that was. That was a couple years ago in a different spot. The reason it's titled that, I know I have these insane titles, is it actually makes that noise. Whatever the creature that's doing that goes ooh ah ooh. It really does that, and you got to be a primate to sound out vowel sounds.
all right, let's check it out. Yeah, you weren't kidding. I mean, that's actual vowel sounds. That I've never heard anything like that. That is weird.
Yeah, David Ellis, he analyzed that one also. He's the one that looped it, 3 times there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's actually he's doing a book now, and he's collecting a bunch of. He's got a couple of ones that I've recorded where it almost sounds like a language, like the ooh ah ooh, or where the tone changes and all that. And he's putting all those together, trying to, I think, maybe make a Rosetta Stone kind of thing. But that's very exciting.
It is very weird. By doing the show, talking to a lot of people, I've started to notice a pattern where a lot of people are reporting from different parts of the country where they'll hear something and it sounds like a 2-syllable type of word or phrase. Like they can't make a large word, but they can kind of put 2 sounds together. It's just one of those things where you just keep getting little bits of info here and there, and it'd be interesting to see where David Ellis, takes all this and including the sounds that you guys have captured down in Ohio. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, very, very honored to be part of that. And David is he'll do a great job of that. I know, and he'll probably find something or come up with something, and I'm predicting he'll have he'll create kind of a template for something. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Something good's going to come out of that. Because if you keep putting sounds together, maybe pretty soon you can maybe figure something out.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you guys, or I guess, ask you specifically since you're the one here, have you over the years, thinking about what you've experienced, what you've seen, what you heard, have you come to a point yet where you have an idea of what it is we're dealing with when we talk about Bigfoot out there?
I don't know. I think and this is just my guess, people out there don't kill me for this, but I think it's maybe a mix of something, maybe early hominid and an ape or something, because it's got different characteristics of different things. So it's got to be some kind of a hybrid, a mix. I do not believe aliens brought them here to mine gold. If UFOs can come here with a spacecraft, they should be able to pull gold out. They should have something to do that, some kind of contraption. And all the Native Americans, the languages have a word for Bigfoot, and it doesn't refer to Bigfoot as a god or a deity. It's, keeper of the woods, watcher of the woods, grandfather of the woods. It's just something they dealt with and lived alongside. It really wasn't a big deal. It was, respect and stuff like that. And so they were here, So I don't think they were brought here. I think they've been here the whole time. I just think when the white people, we got here and, we started killing everything. We started putting in Dollar Generals every 3 miles. I think Bigfoot before us, I think Bigfoot was awake during the day and slept at night. I think it had, that kind of a pattern. I think they flipped that around. I think they are mostly down during the daytime and they're up at night because, most of the same people in the United States we're in bed or whatever at nighttime, and we're not in the woods, and except for crazy people like us. And they have less chance of running into a person. I think they've changed their method of operation, their MO, to keep away from us. But I'm not sure what it could be. I mean, I think if they ever got enough DNA, I think it would make sense. And I'm Christian. It doesn't mess with my faith or anything. It's going to make sense. Wherever it falls in, it's going to be like, okay, I got it.
Absolutely. Will there be a point that you get to where you can say, you know what? I did what I set out to do, and I can walk away from this?
I've never thought about that. I've been asked before if someone, they had a body somewhere or something, and you can actually go up and look at it and everything, and wow, we're having a storm here, if you've heard that. If I would quit, because there would be, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. It's just right now I'm having fun researching, and people on the team, are just wonderful to be around. It's fun to be around. It's I played baseball and football in high school. Played softball for forever when I was done with that, and so this is my hobby now. So it's fun. You get out in the woods, you see things, you see other animals, you see when a lot of times nothing happens. We're out there and not a freaking thing happens other than maybe a raccoon looking at us. We've had deer walk up and look at us like, "What the hell are you doing here at this time of night?" And but you see the moonlight coming through the trees, and it's just beautiful. And I think to myself, there's people in bed right now that haven't seen this, and they're missing out. And so as long as that's the people I enjoy being around, and to do that, and getting out there is fun, and it got to keep it fun, and not get crazy serious and sane with it. And as long as it remains fun, probably keep doing it. But of course, I'm going to get older, and maybe squatching from the freaking car. What was that? What was that, Sonny? I push my son out of the car and go see what that was. But I have to tell you, this is just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. We were in an area, nothing was happening, and there's this huge oak tree in this field, and all of a sudden, all these fireflies, lightning bugs, whatever, welled up from the ground and came up in rows and just kind of dispersed into this tree. And I'm like, and you know, couldn't get a picture of it or anything, but too far away to do that. But it was just beautiful. And I pointed and I said, look at that. And I said, somebody years ago seen the exact thing, and he's probably the one that invented Christmas lights, because that's what it looked like. It was unbelievable. So
that is beautiful, and I think that's a great thing, you know, to remind us that when we are out looking for things like Bigfoot, we need to be also aware of the beauty of nature that's out there, and not to take that for granted. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, Mike, just thank you for coming on and for sharing some great interactions that you've had over the years and some great audio. And you know, before we close our time out, is there a way that people can keep up to date with what the Ohio Night Stalkers are up to? Or
yes, we have a Facebook page. Please like it. Ohio Night Stalkers, space between each word there. I post anything we're going to do. Like any place, you know, Mike's not even doing the lectures this year. He's like retired. And, but I'm doing them this year solo. And the next one coming up is June 21st. I'm actually speaking at the Glide Sasquatch Festival in Glide, Oregon. But I do have some in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and some other places. And they can check on there. I think one of them is in, I'm not sure, September, October. It's a Spirits of the Forest Bigfoot Festival. That's in Salina, Ohio. And Russ is going to be there. We actually took Russ to our location it'll be 3 years ago this July, where some of the rocks were thrown. But anyway, anyone can find out information if they go there.
That's great. People can meet you at different places around the U.S. coming up, it sounds like. But Mike Miller, thank you so much for spending some time tonight. I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me on and talking about it. And thank you very much. Appreciate it. I had a blast.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Mike's encounters from rock throwing to the eerie sounds of the forest remind us that sometimes the wilderness holds more than we can ever understand. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend who loves a good mystery, and leave us a review if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Have you had an encounter of your own? Whether it's in Ohio, the Pacific Northwest, or anywhere in between, please send me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your story and maybe feature it in an upcoming episode. And don't forget, Sasquatch Summerfest is coming up on July 11th through the 12th in Oak Ridge, Oregon. Bigfoot Society listeners can grab a 2-day admission for the price of a 1-day admission with code BFS at checkout. You can get those tickets now at www.sasquatchsummerfest.com. Thanks again for being part of the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.